Okay, so I saw this on Twitter. They said, what's a great solo album by someone who used to be in a band or group? To talk about Paul McCartney's Ram album. He did this with his wife, Linda McCartney, in 1971. I think that this is his best album, and a lot of Paul McCartney fans would agree with me. And so, to many people, I really like this as the opening track on this album. And I also really enjoy stuff like Backseat of My Car. It's just so gorgeous with all the instrumentation there. And I really liked Paul's vocals on that song, particularly. Uncle Albert, Admiral Halsey is certain a favorite on here for me. Even stuff like Another Day, I really quite enjoyed. Smile Away has grown on me. I used to not care for the song too much, but now I can definitely appreciate it for what it is. And I really like the Ram song and like reprise kind of moment on this album too. So it's just really great because he like professionally recorded this album, because his first one he kind of did it more so at his house, and then he got bashed a lot on the critics for that one. And so this one, he just refined it, got the instrumentation that he needed. His vocals on here are beautiful, great catchy songwriting from him as always. I like Linda's harmonies and what she contributes to the album as well. And whenever this album first came out, he got panned by the critics, and they said, oh, the album's not very good. And then over time, they were like, oh, we were wrong. They were just hating just to hate. And Paul McCartney did what had to be done, one of my favorite singer-songwriters of all time. So this is like A+ for me. And it's just a really great album that is very reflective of that time. Another one from Paul McCartney that I wanted to talk about, Chaos and Creation in the Backyard, another one of his best albums to me. And so Too Much Rain is a gorgeous piece. Jenny Wren is one of my favorite Paul McCartney songs, and he has a song on here, Riding to Vanity Fair, which I like because it's a moodier piece for him as well, and he typically doesn't really make songs like that. A lot of his stuff is very happy and up-tempo and stuff like that. And so that's kind of why I like this song, because it's different, and I really like the lyrics and the production and the atmosphere of that song. So I really, really enjoy this album. I think it's a strong body of work, and I'm pretty sure his producer like said that I really tried to get the best out of him, and he was just honest about the tracks that needed to be on this album and make sure they're cutting out the fluff, and I think that they did a great job. And this was 2005. He still sounds great. Still writing great songs. Yeah, it's a really good album. On to some Harry Styles. So this album, Harry's House, I played it so many times the year it came out. I think that it is a great album. And so some of my favorite songs off of this album, Daylight is my favorite song on the album. I think it's a great record. It's super catchy. Late Night Talking is just infectious. That deserves so much more as a single. Music for a Sushi Restaurant is a great way to open up the album. I like all the horns that were on here as well. Matilda's definitely a thought-provoking piece on this album for sure. So there's not really any skips on this album. I think that Daydreaming is probably the weakest song on the album, along with Cinema, but I haven't skipped them yet, and I usually like to listen to this album in full. And As It Was the big single off this album, number one for 15 weeks. You think I'd be tired of it, but I'm really not. I still do like the song. I think it's because of the production that it has, because a song like Watermelon Sugar from his second album, I can't stand it, I can't. But yeah, I really like this album artistically from Harry, a great pop album, and I loved it from the beginning. So excited for his next album and to see what he does. I hope he releases an album this year. Beyonce Renaissance. This album is basically flawless. It really is. I love it. And so some of my favorite songs off of this, I really quite enjoyed Virgo's Groove, one of her best songs, top 5 song, just the production and the vocals. And like I said, just because she's not singing how she sang during I Am Sasha Fierce and 4 doesn't mean she can't sing anymore. She's just using her voice in a different way, and Beyonce, one of the best vocalists of all time, I don't care. And some of y'all need to give her 10s for that. And Plastic Off the Sofa was another great moment for this album. It used to be my favorite song, and then Virgo's Groove kind of took over that slot. I'm That Girl was a great opener. I love Alien Superstar. Cuff It was a moment. America Has a Problem has always been one of my favorite songs on this album. So yeah, I could pick most of Beyonce's albums, but Renaissance is probably still my favorite, so I wanted to go with this one. Of course, I have to have Michael Jackson's Thriller album in here. I mean, this album is just iconic. There is not a bad song on this album. Some of my favorites, Baby Be Mine, The Lady in My Life, The Girl Is Mine with Paul McCartney. I feel like y'all do a little bit too much on that song. I really enjoy it, though. I think their collaboration, Say Say Say, would have fit better for the album. But, I mean, hit after hit after hit. So infectious to listen to, sold so many records for a reason, influenced many, and I fear it's his best album, so definitely have to talk about Thriller. Next up, Hayley Williams, Flowers for Vases, The Consos. Hopefully I'm pronouncing it correctly. Some of my favorite songs off of here, First Thing to Go, great way to open it up. Over These Hills, love this song on the album. And Ordinary definitely was a standout for me as well. And this is just a beautiful acoustic album. It's very stripped back for the most part. I like the songwriting on here, and I feel like this album is underrated. Like, I never see anybody talking about this album, which I really think is a shame. So I wanted to kind of have this moment to give it its praise that it deserves. Technically, she's still in Paramore, but I'm counting this album anyways because I really like it, and I think that more people should. Justin Timberlake, the 2020 Experience, Part 1. And he's a horrible person. We can acknowledge that, and he deserves to be held accountable for what he has done. The music gives for the most part, it does. I can say that. And definitely one of the best albums of the decade for sure. Some of my favorite songs off of this album include Push Your Love Girl. Just what a great way to open up this album. So infectious and, really cool in terms of the vocals and what he can do in regards to that. Strawberry Bubblegum, top 10 Justin Timberlake song all time for me. I think it's super amazing, especially that part at the ending. And then Tunnel Vision, just a soundscape with that song in particular just always amazes me every single time that I listen to it. So that's always a mention for me. Blue Ocean Floor, I feel like is quite underrated. I've always loved that song on this album. And so I don't really get why people don't go up for it, but we should talk about it a little bit more. And yeah, pretty strong album in my opinion, and I think that this is his best album. Last up, I got The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, released in 98. What a classic R&B rap album. And, doo-wop, that thing, we know it, we love it, but there's a lot of other great stuff on here, like Superstars, definitely one of my favorites, especially that line about Foot Locker. And I love Everything is Everything and just the production that's going on there, and her vocals and just everything on that song. And Nothing Even Matters featuring D'Angelo is probably the best song on this album. I also really love Every Ghetto, Every City. I really like the collaboration with Mary J. Blige on this album. She was singing down, she was rapping down. Like, this is just such a good album. There's just no skips on this album, and if you love R&B music, you love rap music, you love 90s, neo-soul, all that stuff, then you've heard of this album. And this is one that actually took me multiple listens to get into because I really did not get the hype at first. I'm going to be honest with you. But I went back to it a few more times and then everything finally clicked for me. This album, I get why it has a lot of praise. It's really good. So those are some of my favorite solo albums by someone who used to be in a band or group. Hopefully I didn't forget anything too egregious. These are just some of the first ones that came to mind. But let me know what you think of my list down below in the comments. What is your favorite out of all these? And what is your favorite solo album released by someone who was in a band or group previously? And let's continue that conversation. But this was a lot of fun.